Okay, so here we're going to look at how to load your beads into the syringes. So I have two 3 ml syringes. One of them is actually going to be for my cells and one is for my beads. So the one for my cells, I like to just pull it back to get a little bit of the tension out, and then I'll just set it over to the side. The one for the beads, I'm going to actually pull the plunger all the way out so that I can add in the magnet. So here are the magnets that we use, these little magnetic stir discs. And I want to just take one out with my hand. I wouldn't use dirty gloves, but as long as there isn't, a ton of dust on your gloves, it should be fine. You don't need to use a tweezer or anything like that. We don't worry too much about sterile technique here. So then I just made sure that my stir disc is nicely at the top of the syringe, and then I'm going to add my DTT to my beads. My beads I've already counted and prepared, so they're already sitting in lysis buffer. And then I'm going to take a P1000 and just mix this up really well to get the DTT evenly distributed. And then I'm going to transfer it to my syringe by placing the tip inside the opening of the syringe and then pulling back on the plunger. You never want to push down on the pipette itself. Always just pull back with the plunger. And then I'm going to pull this back a bit to get some extra air in there. And if you just let that sit for a minute, you should be good to go. So when I'm setting up for a drop-seq run, the first thing I actually do is set up the oil. So we like to use a 20 ml syringe. You can certainly use a 10 ml syringe if you want, but it's always nice to have the extra volume because you will need about 5 to 6 mils of oil per mil of sample that you drop. So I'm going to kind of wiggle this tubing on to the needle. Holding the syringe upright, I'm going to push any air out into the needle itself and maybe a little bit into the tubing. And then I'm going to set this all up here in the pump and set it to about 30,000 microliters per hour and hit run and wait until I start to see some oil dripping out. I usually like to wait until I see a couple of steady drops coming out just to make sure that there isn't any weird buildup of pressure in the system, that the drops are coming out in a uniform way. And then I'm just going to leave that there for now. I don't want to hook the oil up into the device before the cells and the beads are ready, because even though you stop the flow on the oil, a little bit could still easily come out into the device, and that would cause problems for when you actually go to start it later. So here I have my bead syringe that I had filled before, and what I'm doing is I'm just mixing it up really well. I kind of pull the plunger back a little bit more even and really make sure that the disc has mixed up the beads uniformly, and then push the beads up. Then I fix the needle like you just saw. And then I add my tubing. And I try to be quite quick about this because then I want to go back and keep mixing it to make sure that these beads don't settle. I want to keep the volume of beads nice and evenly distributed. Then I'm going to quickly hook it up into this pump. And then as soon as I lower that, the first thing I'm going to do before I walk away or set anything else up is make sure that the beads are close enough to the magnet that the stir disc is mixing them uniformly. So you want to make sure you do that even before you go to prime the tubing, which is what I'm doing right now, by again setting the speed to about 30,000 microliters per hour and just doing it until you start to see a drop of beads come out. So here we're loading up the cells, and again just sticking the tip right there into the syringe and pulling back gently. And then you see I slowly push it back up while holding the syringe vertically so that all the air goes up to the top. I usually push it about, halfway into the little neck at the top. Then I affix the needle, cut my tubing, gonna wiggle that onto the needle. And you want to make sure that the tubing is pretty much all the way onto the needle so that it doesn't get jostled and come off during the run. You don't have to worry about it touching all the way to the back, but you don't want it to just be a quarter or half of the way on. Make sure it's at least 3/4 of the way on. And this is especially important for the beads, since the beads are positioned vertically. They're even more prone to having the tubing detached from the needle. So really just make sure that the tubing for the beads is as far onto the syringe as you can get it. So here I'm starting to hook things into the device. I already primed the cells, and here I actually think I just forgot to prime this oil, so I'm just priming that now. And remember, when I say priming, I just mean setting it to a speed of about 30,000 microliters per hour, letting at least 1 or 2 drips come out, and then setting it back to whatever flow rates are optimal for your particular device. This will vary depending on whether you make the devices yourself or if you purchase them from a company. So it all depends on the tolerance of your device. Some devices handle higher flow rates better and still produce uniform droplets. Other ones require you to use a lower flow rate. And so what I'm doing now is I'm just watching for the triangle to form. So when you first press run and all 3 of the flows, the cells, beads, and then the oil, at first it'll kind of be a mess as the different flows are fighting each other and making their way through the channels of the device, and then finally they should start to come together and form the triangle. So then what I did, as soon as I see the triangle form, I stop the beads in the cells and I let it go for maybe about 5 seconds, and then I start up the cells and the beads again. And what this does is it allows the oil to kind of coat the outflow chamber and a little bit of the area coming into where the triangle is. And I find that that just helps avoid the clear road issue. When you see a clear road going through the outflow area, that means that you're not actually forming droplets. The different flows are all just shooting through there. And when you are forming nice droplets, the road will be what we call the blurry road. That's because you have these round droplets that are just moving by very, very quickly. So once I've done all of that, then I'm just going to hold the outflow tubing up against the side of the waste tubing and make sure that I see the nice blurry road coming down along the falcon tube, and then at that point I'm going to transfer it to the collection tube, and then we are done.